Story 1. The Midnight Woods. It was a moonless night, and the darkness pressed in around us as we drove through the winding roads that cut through the woods. My friend Jake and I were college students on a road trip, seeking adventure and escape from our demanding studies. The gas gauge in our old car had been flirting with empty for miles, and anxiety gnawed at our nerves. "Man, we've got to find a gas station soon," Jake said, his voice tinged with worry as he glanced at the dwindling fuel gauge. I nodded in agreement, my eyes scanning the desolate forest that surrounded us. The road seemed to stretch on endlessly, and there were no signs of civilization in sight. After what felt like an eternity, we spotted the dim glow of a gas station in the distance. We heaved a collective sigh of relief and pulled in. But our hopes were dashed when we found the station abandoned, the pumps silent and devoid of life. "This can't be happening," I muttered, my heart sinking. Jake furrowed his brow, studying the surroundings. "I saw a sign back there for a gas station a few miles away. We might make it if we hurry." With no other option, we got back in the car and continued down the desolate road. The forest seemed to press closer now, and the atmosphere grew heavy with an ominous presence. The only sounds were the tires on the road and the soft rustling of leaves. As we drove deeper into the woods, the sense of isolation and foreboding intensified. My phone had no signal, and the darkness outside the car was impenetrable. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us from the shadows. Just when we thought we couldn't drive any farther, we spotted another gas station up ahead. It was a small, run-down place, but the sight of it filled us with hope. We pulled up to the pumps and were relieved to find that they were operational. I stepped out of the car and began to refuel, while Jake went inside to pay. The cold night air sent shivers down my spine as I filled the tank. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were not alone. I glanced over my shoulder into the forest, but the darkness was impenetrable. I told myself it was just my imagination running wild. As I finished refueling, Jake returned from the station with a concerned look on his face. He said the station attendant had warned him about the woods at night, cautioning us to leave as soon as possible. The attendant had a haunted look in his eyes, as if he had seen something that defied explanation. We decided to heed the warning and get back on the road. We were eager to put the gas station and the unsettling encounter behind us, but as we drove deeper into the woods, the sense of dread continued to weigh on us. A few miles down the road, the car suddenly sputtered and came to a halt. The fuel gauge had fallen to empty, and we were once again stranded in the woods. "Damn it," Jackie cursed, banging his hands on the steering wheel. I knew we shouldn't have ventured this far into the woods. I grabbed my phone and attempted to call for help, but the signal remained non-existent. Panic set in as we realized our dire situation. It was now past midnight, and the woods seemed to come alive with unsettling sounds. We had no choice but to start walking in search of help. The darkness was all-encompassing, and our only source of light was the flashlight on my phone. The beam illuminated the dense underbrush, casting eerie shadows that danced in the trees. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees appearing to shift and move. I could hear whispers in the wind, soft and indistinct, like the murmurs of unseen voices. We quickened our pace, driven by a growing sense of unease. As we trudged through the woods, we came across a dilapidated cabin hidden in the trees. It seemed to materialize out of nowhere, its presence sending a chill down our spines. The windows were broken, and the door hung open, creaking in the breezy. "Should we go inside?" Jake asked, his voice shaky. I hesitated but ultimately decided that it was our best chance to find help. The cabin's interior was just as decrepit as the exterior, with rotting furniture and peeling wallpaper. A sense of foreboding hung in the air. We searched for any signs of communication, but the cabin appeared to have been abandoned for years. Just as we were about to leave, I spotted a piece of paper on the floor, partially concealed by a broken chair. I picked it up and read the chilling message scrawled in shaky handwriting. "Leave now, they come at night." As I finished reading, a loud thud echoed from outside the cabin. We froze in terror as the door swung shut, sealing us inside. The whispers in the wind grew louder, and a presence filled the cabin. From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure, its form shifting and indistinct. It was as if the very woods had come alive and taken shape. The figure closed in on us, its hollow eyes fixed on ours. Story 2. The Fare That Haunted Me. I had been working as an Uber driver for months, my middle-aged life marked by endless shifts to pay off mounting medical bills. My days were a haze of long hours behind the wheel, shuttling passengers to their destinations, aching for some relief from the relentless grind. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I picked up a mysterious lady in the middle of nowhere. It was a moonless night, and I was navigating a lonely stretch of road that seemed to stretch on forever. The tall trees loomed like silent sentinels in the dark, their branches casting eerie, elongated shadows. The only illumination came from my car's headlights, which created a tunnel of visibility on the desolate road. I had just dropped off my previous passenger and was about to head home when the ride request came in. The pickup location was marked as unknown. I hesitated for a moment, wary of the vague destination, but the need for extra money pushed me to accept the fare. As I approached the pickup point, a sense of unease settled over me. It was a remote location, far from any signs of civilization. I parked the car, its engine humming softly, and waited. A few minutes passed, and just as I was about to cancel the ride, I saw her, a figure emerging from the darkness. She was dressed in a flowing white gown that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Her long dark hair cascaded down her back, and she moved toward the car with an ethereal grace. She opened the back door and got in, her presence sending a shiver down my spine. Her eyes were hidden beneath the shadow of her hair, and her voice was a soft whisper as she gave her destination, another remote location, deeper into the woods. The unsettling feeling in my gut grew stronger, but I swallowed my unease and began to drive. The woods seemed to close in around us, their presence oppressive and suffocating. The woman remained silent in the back seat, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. I couldn't help but steal glances at her in the rearview mirror. Her face was pale, and her features were hauntingly beautiful, but there was something otherworldly about her. Her eyes, when they finally met mine in the mirror, were filled with a deep, unsettling sadness. The journey into the woods continued, and a sense of dread clung to me. The car's headlights cut through the inky darkness, revealing nothing but the twisted trees and dense underbrush. I had no cell signal, and the realization that I was completely isolated weighed heavily on my mind. The woman's voice broke the silence, her words filled with melancholy. "This is the place," she said, her tone soft and almost wistful. I parked the car, and we stepped out into the cold night air. The woods seemed to have a life of their own, their branches twisting and writhing in the shadows. The woman led me deeper into the forest, her movements almost hypnotic. As we walked, she began to speak, sharing a haunting tale of love and loss, of promises unfulfilled, and of a restless spirit seeking release. She spoke of a tragedy that had unfolded in the woods many years ago, a tragedy that had left her wandering these lonely roads, searching for something she could never find. I listened in rapt silence, the woman's story casting a spell over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was caught in the midst of a supernatural encounter, a tale that defied all reason. But I was compelled to stay, to bear witness to her sorrowful narrative. As she finished her story, a low, mournful wind seemed to echo her words. It was then that I realized the darkness around us was alive with ghostly apparitions, their translucent forms drifting through the trees. Their eyes were filled with the same profound sadness that I had seen in the woman's. Panic surged through me, and I tried to retreat, to escape from the haunting scene. But it was as if the woods themselves had closed in around us, trapping me in their spectral grip. The apparitions drew nearer, their outstretched arms reaching for me, and I felt a cold, malevolent energy enveloping me. The woman's voice filled my ears, her words an eerie incantation. "You will join us, as all must." I struggled to break free, but the apparitions closed in, their touch like icy tendrils that reached into my very soul. I felt myself being pulled into the spectral throng, and the last thing I saw before the darkness consumed me was the woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. I awoke in my car, the first light of dawn filtering through the trees. The woman was gone and the woods were silent. It took me a moment to realize that I was alone and free from the haunting grasp of the forest. I drove away from that place as quickly as I could, my heart pounding and my mind reeling. The encounter had left me shaken, my perception of reality forever altered. I could never explain what had happened that night. Story 3: The Midnight Desolation. It was a moonless night when I decided to take a late-night drive through the desolate countryside. The open road always offered a sense of freedom and escape from the hustle and bustle of city life. The radio played a soft melody, and the hum of the engine was a soothing companion as I ventured further into the inky blackness. The country road stretched ahead of me, winding through fields and forests. The night was silent, save for the occasional chirping of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. It was the kind of solitude that allowed for introspection and contemplation, a moment of respite from the chaos of daily life. As I continued to drive, I noticed a peculiar sight in the distance. A dim, flickering light, like a beacon in the night, appeared on the side of the road. My curiosity got the better of me, and I slowed down to investigate. The source of the light revealed itself to be an old weathered gas station. It was a relic from a bygone era, its signs faded and its pumps covered in a thick layer of dust. I couldn't resist the urge to stop and explore this forgotten place. The moment I stepped out of my car, a sense of unease washed over me. The night seemed to grow colder, and the air was thick with an unexplained foreboding. I entered the station, and the bell above the door chimed with a melancholic note that echoed through the empty building. The interior was dimly lit, with shelves of dusty, long-forgotten products. The counter was barren, and a layer of grime coated everything in sight. The silence was oppressive, and I couldn't help but feel like an intruder in this abandoned place. As I moved further into the station, I noticed an old radio sitting on the counter. Its soft, crackling static filled the room, and I was compelled to turn the dial. The airwaves came to life with a distorted voice, its words barely comprehensible. "Stay away. Leave now," the voice seemed to whisper from the depths of the static. I froze in place, my heart racing. The voice sounded like a desperate plea, a warning that sent chills down my spine. I couldn't explain it, but it was as if the very air in the station had grown heavy with an ominous presence. With a growing sense of unease, I decided to heed the cryptic message and leave the gas station behind. But as I stepped back outside, I realized that the night had grown even darker, the stars overhead obscured by a heavy rolling fog. My surroundings had changed. The countryside, once familiar, had transformed into an eerie, desolate landscape. The fields were overgrown with twisted, thorny vines, and the trees stood like gnarled sentinels. It was as if I had been transported to a different world. Panic welled up within me as I hurried back to my car, the fog closing in around me like a suffocating shroud. I tried to start the engine, but it sputtered and died, leaving me stranded in this otherworldly nightmare. As I looked out the car's windows, I noticed a figure in the distance. It was a silhouette, barely discernible in the impenetrable darkness. The figure began to move, drawing closer, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I reached for my phone, hoping to call for help, but there was no signal. The sense of isolation was overwhelming, and I was left with no choice but to confront the approaching figure. The fog parted, revealing the figure to be a woman. She was dressed in a flowing, tattered gown, and her long, tangled hair obscured her face. Her eyes were a haunting shade of blue, filled with a sorrow that seemed to seep into my very soul. "Who are you?" I stammered, my voice trembling. The woman's voice was a soft, mournful whisper. "I've been waiting for you." She extended a skeletal hand, and I recoiled in fear. It was as if she held a malevolent power over me, one that I couldn't resist. She beckoned for me to follow her, and with a strange mixture of curiosity and dread, I stepped out of the car. The woman led me through the desolate landscape, the fog clinging to us like a haunting specter. As we walked, she spoke of a tragic tale of love and loss, of promises broken and souls that could never find peace. Her words filled me with a profound sense of sorrow, as if I had become a part of her story. The fog seemed to come alive, swirling around us and revealing ghostly apparitions that drifted through the trees. Their eyes were filled with the same mournful sadness that I had seen in the woman's. I realized that I had been drawn into a realm of the supernatural, a place where the living and the dead coexisted in a state of perpetual longing. The woman's story was intertwined with the restless spirits that surrounded Yus, and I had become a part of their spectral narrative. The apparitions reached out to me, their translucent forms like wisps of smoke. They seemed to beckon me to join them, to become one with the haunting presence of the fog-shrouded landscape.